The NFL and the Players Association have settled a lawsuit based off concussions. Now, the reported payments are $765 million. But in my opinion, and in Eddie George's opinion, and Peter King's opinion, the owners flat out won this one via first-round knockout, you could easily say. No pun intended, kind of. So the injury settlement, $765 million, over 4,000 plus retired players. The injury settlements and medical benefits are for the retired, obviously. Now here's the big thing for the NFL. They have no admission of liability from the NFL and their properties. So that means that and another facet to it, very quickly, is that the NFL does not have to say that they had prior knowledge knowing of concussions and what could lead to concussions. That's also pretty big. Thus, you have a settlement. The NFL will not release findings of brain-related injuries, and they negotiated for 2+ months. Before I continue, an obvious win for the owners in this instance?
Yes, an obvious win. And what I'm trying to figure out is how, because of this settlement, and of course now it's kind of hush money, as some people are calling it. Does it mean the public doesn't talk about it anymore? I mean, yeah, there's certain proof and certain documents that can now be concealed, I guess.
Why wouldn't the public talk about it?
That's what I'm saying. Everyone's calling it a win because now they don't have to talk about their potential past dealing with head injuries. No, the public is still going to talk about it. So I see it as a win, but not as like now they have a clean slate. No one's going to bother them anymore. They're still going to get in trouble for this.
Here's why it's a huge win. So they're going to reportedly pay each team about $30 million over the next few years. According to Peter King, a great writer for SportsIllustrated.com, you know what each team, on average, took in last year, money-wise, revenue-wise? $280 million. So they're paying, I don't know, 10% of that, maybe. It is a huge win, as Jake would say, a huge win for the owners. I mean, they have to pay some, not much at all.
It's an afterthought.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Again, I mean, I don't know if we expected anything different. But then when you have this kind of money, you throw around the number $765 million. And when you throw that number around and you say, well, guys that have been affected by their families, I know you may go through the amounts, but the max is $5 million, depending on, I think it was for Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
People who suffer from Alzheimer's versus then dementia is down to $3 million, and I think the $4 million
If you die to CTE, it's $4.
So again, they're not, their families will get something for it, but $5 million is nothing.
But
it's something for them, I get it, but in the grand scheme of it, that's going to make everyone just calm down a little bit about it.
So you just brought up something really important. I was listening to Dan Patrick on my ride in. They were interviewing Eddie George, a guy who has carried the ball 300+ times, at least in 3 seasons. I mean, each season. And he made a fantastic point about how big of a win this was for the owners. So those guys who are suffering from Alzheimer's and depression and the players that may have died from CTE, those families or players who are still living may get $100,000, $200,000. So what are they going to use that for? Are they going to use it for medical benefits? Or are they going to use it to pay off a loan on a house? I mean, it might not even go into their medical benefits at all. And plus, it's chump change for the owners. And Eddie George made that point, not mine, and it is a brilliant point.
It's a little depressing because we live in our, not even a bubble, but we're in a level where we think, oh my God, $765 million. And people think that and
but
go,
it's not like to one guy. Exactly. Like, that's the thing, yeah.
And in the league itself, I mean, I know they're not the ones paying out directly. It's through the owners, but the league, and we're going to do this story later, $1 billion.
Oh yeah,
it's a $1 billion league.
Yeah,
people. I think
the top 8 teams made over $1 billion.
It's amazing. So when you think about it in those terms, which I don't think anyone does, no one thinks they're worth over $1 billion. This is a $1 billion league. So that's nothing. It's nothing. Think about $5. Think about the lunch that you just bought today. $5 footlong. It's over. Yeah. I'll make you guys stop bothering me if I just buy a $5 footlong. Would you take that deal?
Let me ask you this. The NFL and Roger Goodell are under an incredibly harsh microscope, right? For good reason, though. They could have stalled this out as much as they wanted to. They could have tried and nickel and dime the Players Association as much as possible because they're not losing much. They're not losing anything. Out of anything, the players settled because this is probably the highest that they got it to, $765 million. I mean, the NFL really didn't have to settle yet. They could have stalled out more, but you know what? The big thing, obviously, was the terms and into the lawsuit was that the NFL doesn't have to say that they had prior knowledge and and that they didn't run studies and all this stuff, and it doesn't have to be brought up again, and it's going to be impossible for at least 10+ years for new players that suffer from these symptoms to bring it up again because of this lawsuit.
It's a business move because then the next, as you said, every year the revenue and the income, it increases. What, 15%, something like that? I saw
something
on one
like
of these
that.
stories. So when you think about 10 years from now, as this keeps increasing, we just made this much more money.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll pay it off for the next to plan for our future.
Yeah. So obviously,
a businessman.